right. Good morning. The park board is reconvening. We are at Louisiana State Penitentiary. It is Monday, June 5th, 2023, and it is 11:03 a.m. Would the staff there at the penitentiary please introduce yourself for the record?
Deputy Warden Rochelle Ambo.
Reginald Admiral, classification.
Carmen Shipley, offender records.
Is everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. And we have before us Mr. Derricks. Would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and your DOC number.
Jerome Derricks, 113381.
Right, and counsel, would you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, Emily Lubin on behalf of Mr. Derricks.
Okay, and we'll let you wrap it up for us at the end.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, let me, before we get started, I want to recognize the folks who have joined us. We have in support, we have the Parole Project, Mr. Hundley, who will be speaking, and we have Wanda Miles, who will also be speaking. I'm gonna just read my list real quick. Folks who are in support but will not be speaking: Frank Cushenberry, Ron Hicks, Lois Cushenberry, James Law, Albert Howard, Gary Miles, Roxanne Winters, and Eddie Tolber. We also have here in opposition with us in Baton Rouge, we have representing the victim, Taylor Nason. Did I pronounce that?
Yes, ma'am. I'm
Melissa.
Tiffany, and I'm joining from.
Nason?
Taylor's joining Zoom.
Oh, Taylor's on Zoom. Okay, thank you. David Nason, and then representing the district attorney's office, we have the district attorney, Mr. Ricky Davin, and also with his office, Mr. Bart Morris. And at the appropriate time, we'll ask for those speakers. First, let me just read some identifying information, Mr. Derricks, and we'll get started with the interview process. Ms. Lubin, did you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Frank Cushenberry is present here and he would like to speak as well.
Okay, thank you. I have it. All right. Mr. Derricks, you're here seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in the 23rd Judicial District, Ascension Parish, in May of 1986 to a life sentence for second-degree murder. Is that information correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, your case has been assigned to Mr. Marabella. Would you answer his questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Derricks. My name is Tony Marabella. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Derricks, how old are you, sir?
I'll be 58 September 18th.
And how long have you been in prison on these charges?
A little over 37 years.
And how old were you at the time of the commission of this offense?
20 years of age.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit about who you were at 20 years old. Had you finished school? How far had you gone in school at 20 years old?
Yes, sir. I completed high school in 1984.
Hey, were you working at all?
Yes, sir, I was. I was working at the plant in St. Gabriel at Ciba-Geigy.
Who were you living with?
My sister, Wanda Cushenberry.
Now, you mentioned in your documentation that you use drugs. What kind of
Yes.
drug do you use?
I smoked marijuana and I also took pills.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the marijuana. When did you first start using marijuana?
When I was 16 years old.
How often would you use marijuana at 16?
Probably every weekend.
And what about the pills? When did you progress to the pills, or how did you get to the pills?
When I started running track in high school.
Okay. What were you using?
Black Mollies and speed.
How often were you using those? How old were you when you were running track in high school?
I was 17 when I started running track, and I would use speed to boost my agility and use Mollies to calm down.
In January of 1986, what kind of drugs were you using and how often were you using them?
Marijuana, mostly marijuana.
Now, on this particular day or night, morning, were you using drugs then?
Yes, sir.
What were you using on that particular day?
I was using marijuana that I thought was marijuana, but it had been dipped in PCP and embalming fluid.
How did you find that out?
When the guy that I got it from later, maybe 3 days later, told me what I had, that's when I found out that it wasn't just a regular joint.
Well, tell me what happened. Let's talk about, I want you to be very honest with me as best you can remember what happened on the morning of January the 26th of 1986.
Yes, sir. I had a routine of when I get off from work, I would always go to the car wash my car for the weekend, and I'd always get something to smoke. I smoked that day, and I went to the Waffle House.
Now, when you're talking about smoking, we're talking about smoking marijuana that you're talking about, or you're talking about, what are you talking about smoking?
The PCP, the marijuana that was dipped in embalming fluid and PCP.
Right. Go ahead and continue.
I went to the Waffle House where I was at in my car. Miss Nason approached my car. She was having problems with her car. I got out of my car and I hit Miss Nason. I then put Miss Nason in her car and drove to Bluff Road where I left Miss Nason at.
Tell me why you did this.
I really don't have an idea why I was doing what I was doing. All I know is that the time that it took me to get to the Waffle House, a lot of time had elapsed, and it felt like I was driving on the clouds, and I was having this trip that I've never ever had before. Because I was used to smoking marijuana, but I did not know what this stuff was, and I just didn't really know where I was at. I don't know Miss Nason, never knew her, never seen her, never even went in the Waffle House.
What did you beat her with?
A tire iron.
Where did you get the tire iron from?
I had the tire iron in my car when I left the car wash. And I remember having the tire iron inside where I was at when I left, because while I was going through this trip, it's like things were attacking me. I was just out of my mind.
After you dumped her body in the woods, what did you do then?
After I left Miss Nason off of Bluff Road, I got back into my car, in her car, and went back to my car and just drove around until I wind up back at my sister's house and passed out. And when I woke up a day and a half later, she told me what did I smoke to have me in that type of condition. And I told her that I had smoked this stuff and it just took me on a trip.
Let's talk a little bit about how long you've been in, what you've done while you've been in jail. Before you came to prison, did you get any sort of treatment for your marijuana use or your use of the pills?
No, sir, I didn't.
Were you drug tested regularly at your job?
On the streets, no, sir.
Well, didn't you say, where were you working at?
I was working for a construction company at Ciba-Geigy. We did labor work, and that's where I was working at the time of this.
They didn't drug test you at all?
No, sir.
Okay. So let's talk about what you've done while you've been in prison. What kind of programs have you taken since you've been in prison, dealing strictly with substance abuse? We'll talk about other things, but right now dealing specifically with substance abuse. What programs have you taken, or what have you done with reference to substance abuse?
Yes, sir. In 1993, I started taking 12-step program. In 94, I took the AA program. In 2017, I took the Living in Balance program, which I believe was the better program. of them all. And every Friday night, we have like a small group. And this is to this date. Every third Tuesday, we have a small group. The guy comes off the street and it's like a support group that we have back in the camp where I'm at to talk about the things that we went through on drugs and how it affects us even to this day.
Let me ask you this, what would be your plan to stay sober if you were released in the future? What would you do to make sure you don't go back to using marijuana, finding yourself smoking marijuana, laced in whatever?
Keep a good support group around me like I have today, and find a counseling program, because I believe that I still need some counseling to help me deal with the withdrawals sometimes that I have about having to live through this stuff. I mean, it's hard to describe how to live with something that you know you've done and what caused me to do what I do. And I think I would need counseling, and I would seek that out.
Have you taken any sort of programs that involve victim awareness or things that get you to understand, or at least come to some understanding of the harm that you've done to the family of Ms. Eastman? Tell me about it.
I've taken the victim awareness class, and when I went through the class, it really opened my eyes to all the people that were involved in the crime that I committed, because I had no idea that so many people were affected, from the police department, the colonels, the law enforcement, my family, their family, friends. And I didn't realize that impact that I had by committing this crime, that it will affect so many people. And it helped me to understand that, I just didn't have a right to invade in somebody else's life like that.
Tell me a little bit about the programs that, the clubs that you belong to. I understand you've done a lot of work in Toastmasters and other programs like that in prison. Tell me what that's meant to you and what you've been able to do while you've been in there.
The Toastmasters helped me to be able to relate with people, helping to understand that we're not all the same, and that you have to first understand where a person coming from before you can be understood by that person also. That's just one of the programs that I did with Toastmasters. And Thinking for a Change, Cage Your Rage, all of those programs was really helpful to me in becoming a better person. And
I have a list of all the certificates and achievements that your lawyer has submitted to us. Tell me a little bit about your faith-based programs and what you've done and what that means to you and what you've gotten out of it.
In my faith-based programs, it helped me to be more compassionate towards the people that I live around, because even in here, I see that I can be helpful to those around me. And it gave me the understanding that there is a higher power that I can depend on, that I can call on when I'm going through whatever it is I'm going through or having a bad day. I know that I can look within myself and I can see the spirit working within me that brings me over to where I need to be.
And you've had 15 write-ups since you've been in prison for 37 years. Your last one was in 1999. Have you had any write-ups for intoxication?
Never.
Now, prior to committing this very horrible crime, you didn't have any prison record at all, did you?
No, sir. I've never been in trouble with the law or anything. I never had a juvenile record or anything.
What would be your transition plan if you were given a commutation and allowed to get out at some time in the future? Where would you go? What would you do? Who would you live with? Where would you work?
I would transition to the parole project to get the help that they've offered to give me and help me find the programs that I was discussing about counseling and maybe AA, some type of sobriety group. And after that, I would live with my nephew in St. Gabriel.
Now, Mr. Derricks, very understandably, you have a lot of opposition against your release. There's nothing you can do about that. Family of the victim in this case is adamant about your release. They certainly don't want you out. Law enforcement, very understandably, is adamant against your release. There's nothing that you can do about it, but that's something that needs to be said, needs to be put on the table. Warden, what can you tell us? Warden Ambo, what can you tell us about Mr. Derricks?
Sir, all the programs that you mentioned are true. He has several others. He has an associate degree in pastoral ministry, and he also has a BA in Christian ministry. He's the Camp F minister, and he also ministered to the death row offenders. He has a Christian band that he participates in, and he's very instrumental in all the programs that we have back there at Camp F. Especially we have the pause program. Most of the time he's there talking to the tourists when they come and do the tours and everything. I do believe that Mr. Derrick is a changed person from the person that he was in 1986, just by the reputation that he has here at the prison now with the ministry and everything. So I really think he'll be a good fit to be back into the community.
Thank you, Warden. Mr. Derricks, in addition to the comments by the Warden, I've seen a lot of support that you have, not only from your family, but from other supervisors and staff members at prison. Madam Chairman, I think that's all the questions I have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mirabella. Mr. Rush.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Derricks, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Derricks, I want to revisit Mr. Marabella's question. Why would you beat a lady who needs assistance, who is just asking for help, to give her a boost in her battery, and you conveniently had a tire jack on at your disposal? Why would you beat this person to death? Then put her in your trunk of your car. At the time you were arrested, you say you heard this person moaning. She was not dead yet. And you dumped her in the woods in a swamp in Ascension Parish, knowing that she was still alive, and there was a hospital within 1 mile of that location. And you said you didn't know why. You have to give me something.
Mostly everything that I was doing out of fright, sir. I wasn't thinking rationally when I was doing what I was doing.
No, Mr. Marabella, you didn't even remember. You knew what you were doing and you were frightened. Is that your story?
Excuse me? Excuse me?
You knew what you were doing and you were frightened, so you dumped the body.
Correct.
Then why would you attack her in the first place?
I really don't know, sir. Like I said, I wasn't in my right mind when I was doing it. There was no reason. There was no reason at all for me to do what I did, because it wasn't like I was planning to do this or anything like that, sir, at all. I had no reason. I was just letting the drugs just take effect.
But after you did it, the drugs wore off and you
No,
heard,
sir. No, sir.
but you heard her moaning You were frightened, so you jumped the bike.
I was frightened, sir, when this was going on. All of this was in the same day, sir.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, momentarily after you beat a person to death, you realize, oh, I did something wrong. I'm frightened. I'm fearful. Let me get rid of the evidence. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Okay, we'll hear from the support now. Mr. Hunley, could we hear from the Parole Project?
Thank you. Andrew Hundley with Louisiana Parole Project, here to inform the board that if Jerome Derricks is to be released in the near future, that he will be a client of our program. First and foremost, we must say that this was clearly a senseless crime, and it's very difficult to hear about it and question what Mr. Derricks was thinking when the crime was committed. From Parole Project's perspective, we are looking at the person that Mr. Derricks has become since his incarceration. Went to prison at the age of 20, and he's been there for 38 years. For 38 years, he has demonstrated a record of growth and rehabilitation. I know Warden Ambo and the board clearly has described the programs and the jobs that he has. I think what I should highlight just a bit more is the level of community service, for decades that he has provided in his role in the chaplains department. But overall at Camp F, he has been viewed for years and years as a mainstay and a leader at Camp F. And we feel very confidently, if Jerome were to be released, that not only would he be a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen, but that he would be the same person that he is at Angola at Camp F in his new community. If he is released, Parole Project commits to providing him case management, giving him that initial housing, and also assisting him in his reintegration into the community. Your consideration is appreciated. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Frank Cushenberry.
Stay where you sit, just go straight down. Yeah. Next seat. Y'all can stand?
Yeah, they can see, they could probably see him better in the other chair.
Yes.
One more down, Frank. Go
One more down.
Hey.
Hey, perfect. All right. Go ahead, sir.
How you doing? Jerome's my uncle. I've been about the last 20 years been a strong advocate to him, talking to him, he's been a role model to me, even in his situation. And I've been there every step of the way. If you need anything, somebody to talk to, advice, we give it to each other. If he get a favorable recommendation from you guys, I'll provide a place for him to stay, help him get a job, different things. Anything he need, I'll be there to help support him, to keep him on the right track and keep him doing what he's supposed to do.
All right, thank you, sir. And we have here with us Ms. Wanda Miles, Ms. Secretary.
Good morning. And well, today I'm here on my brother Jerome Derricks' behalf. And I will say at 20 years old, what the person he was back then, he's not that person anymore. I apologize and I'm sorry for the decision that he made, and he allowed the drugs to alter him to do something of that nature. But he has a great support. He has a strong value. It's almost like while he was placed there, God got his attention to do and get on the track that he should have been on. Had he not wavered, he would have been a better person and not in here in this situation now. I thank the board for allowing him to be a part of this today. And he's not, for the 38 years, we have always been by his side. We've always been there to support him. And he's very remorseful for what he's done. And when Jerome do come home, again, like my son said, he's gonna be on the right track. And I just want to say, I'm a retired warden from the women's prison. And just seeing the rehabilitation that a lot of them have went through and the things they did and the decisions they made when they was younger at the age that they didn't even know they were thinking to do those things. They have been, and so have he, have been doing a lot what he need to be doing. And I think when he's gonna come home, he's gonna be a great person in the free world. And he's gonna bring a lot to it. We've already got a church home for him to get ready to transition him back out there and give back to the public. And to reach back to those that need to have that support that they need. And I thank y'all for allowing me to speak.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for hearing. Okay, now we'll hear from opposition, and could we hear from Taylor Nason? She's on Zoom. Do we have her with us?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. So my name is Taylor Nason, and I am the granddaughter of the late Beverly Nason. I'll keep my comments and my remarks brief and direct because that is just the type of person I am. I came in here today not knowing if I was going to be opposed or unopposed, quite frankly. I wanted to hear maybe some remorse or maybe some, I don't know, insight as to a why behind it other than just an excuse to a joint of marijuana being laced with no concrete evidential fact behind that either. So I'm very disappointed that you were given, Mr. Derricks, the platform and the opportunity to speak directly about how you have rehabilitated and focused on the victims, and you completely brushed over that question. So that I'm very, very remorseful to see that that is what we have come to today. So with that, I do firmly believe that you have yet to take full accountability of your actions. So with that, I do suggest that you do serve your full sentence. I do commend you, though, for what you have been doing, the work that you have done. I do not believe that you were the same person that you were 20 years old. I don't. That's just not realistic. However, I do believe in facing the consequences of your actions, especially for something that is so brutal, senseless, and also has monumental and generational trauma that has been passed down from it. So thank you, board, for allowing me to speak today. That is all I have to say.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Miss Melissa, you want to go next, or rather, Mr. Nason? Go ahead, sir. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I'm David Mason. Sorry. And Beverly's passed up. And what we've been put through is, you just can't even measure it with anything. It's just been beyond horrible. We count my days prior to, after the murder, if we didn't know it had taken place, guess my wife goodbye to work that night. I stepped in the Waffle House, obviously she was murdered. And next morning I come in from work, my car's in my bag. I have no idea where she's at. This is what I would tell you about her fault. So for days, we don't know where she's at. We got a car full of blood on the interstate. That's it. So that morning, this is beyond strange. So I started getting phone calls that friends of mine that had law enforcement. I asked them, do you own this certain car? That's it. So now I'm freaking out. So I'm thinking, I have no idea. So we'll wake her up, but she was asleep because I got off 4 or 5 in the morning. Anyway, let's go So where was your mom at the night before? She said, I think she was at the Waffle House. That's the first thing I did. So we ride over there. Sunday morning, I think, it was like the back parking lot's empty. So I said, let's just pull around here, and I saw all the police out front. I wasn't. So we get out, she starts screaming on her side of the truck. She goes, oh my God, I just stepped in mom's blood. And can you imagine this whole parking lot, we park in the spot that my wife's car was in. So, man, it's crazy. She's stepping in the blood. And she's going, oh, and you see all these foot tracks all around. You can almost see where he drove the body around the corner. There. Then we go get the police officer. You can come back here. This is something that you don't have no idea. Okay, so then things kind of start picking up and finally they identified who did it. But for a week, I don't know where my wife is. And that's it. You just can't imagine because you don't know what happened to her. You just got pieces of it. It's just, no, it's not good. Blood everywhere. Slaughter that happened. And this is the guy that did it. So, you know, we got grandkids that will never see her, you know, all this generational stuff that you never going to have. We don't have any reason why it happened. It's just beyond comprehensible. One human can do that to another. Wow, you're supposed to be helping her. It's crazy. I can't make any sense of it to this day. We got to keep coming back here. It's really making me mad. It's why we come back here. We cut a deal. Kind of. Drop first degree off the charge. Let's do that. He reckoned the fire. That's what it said. That was like no gray area. He's going to even get out later and get anything. It's like in prison. Here I am, second time in 5 years, trying to keep this guy in prison. What we did. Why do we have to do this as a family? Maybe why? Where's the law at? We had the law on our side. I was like, it's turned against us. I hate it. So as a victim, we get to be a victim. Again, we can't put this in rest. We can't. We're going to come back here 5 years from now if something won't happen today that he's got to stay here. So why did her and I got to do this? No, if we go home today, we're still got to ride all the way to Florida, thinking we're going to keep doing this until we die. One of us does, and it's just horrible. Why are we going to relive it? This isn't bad. So, while I'm happy he's found God, I'll people find God. Sure didn't know God when they got him. So, I can only buy into so much of this success story. I was saying that he's a new guy, he's become one with the Lord and doing the Lord's work. Can't take away part of that, but that's still the guy that really would be my wife today. So how can I sit here and go, sure, let it go. He's never going to do that again. Who knows in his courtroom? Not. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for hearing us. Forgive me for skipping. My name is Melissa Mason. That's my name. My mom gave me that name. I'm named after her. I don't mean. She was my everything. She was a little girl. If she was somewhere, I was with her. I wanted her. Jerome Derricks took my mother from me. Brutally, violently, horrifically. Today, we stand here all with a voice, but she doesn't have one. We have to be in that voice for her. I cannot say enough how I'm happy for him that he is taking these classes and he's learning these lessons and he's doing those things and he is touching lives. And he can do that right from where he is. Our gift to him, if you want to call it that, because there are no winners here. Not in this room. There are no winners. But I don't get a call. I don't get a hug. I don't get a letter. I didn't get to go to my mother for advice. No dances, prom, homecoming, no first dates. She missed my graduation. It took me years just to graduate from college because I couldn't finish. The trauma was awful, and I still finished. So I can make her proud, even though she couldn't be there with me to watch me walk. I gave birth to 3 beautiful children. And you know who was there to hold my hand? A nurse. She never got to hold any of her grandbabies, see her great grandbabies. Nothing. She doesn't get anything. She wasn't allowed anything. She was breathing. Still had the opportunity to a life. One different attorney could have dropped her off at a hospital. I could still have her. Instead, my father has to identify an absolutely unidentifiable body. A blood-soaked car. We have to say there are consequences for every action. And his consequence was life in prison without the possibility of parole. That is what we all agreed to, and that is what I am asking justice be served, and that sentence be honored, that he stay where he is. I have lived a life in survival mode. I've been in trauma counseling for years. And you get to a point where you think you're able to heal. And then it's just like a scab on the wound, and it just scars, and it becomes generational. You're afraid to let anyone leave your sight because you don't know if they're ever going to come home. You don't know. She came in. I spoke to her. She gave me a hug and kiss, and I woke up the next morning expecting to see. None of us ever did, and I couldn't even lay a rose in her hand in a casket because I couldn't see her. I thought when I came, just concrete tombstone that I get to go to. And that's it. That's what he left us with. And I'm asking you, please, let us stand and stay where he is, and please allow us to heal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Babin?
Morning, honorable members of the board. Appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak before you. I rise today in opposition. This gentleman from Quincy. This crime occurred in 1986. In 1986, I was a senior at LSU undergraduate. So trying to piece together what happened in 1986. My author this old has always been a challenge. But what I could decipher is a few things. Number one, I made an error whenever I filed an opposition paper with this board. I said, this lady's daughter was a young child. She was 15 years old. She was a young child to me. But as I was sitting here thinking, listening, I was like, you know, it's even more traumatic for her being 15 because she was 2 weeks old, 2 months old. What is a 2-month-old know? This girl actually had the investigation, the identification, the trauma. She was a teenager. It soaked in well. So for that era in my opposition, I do apologize, but it is really worse than I thought, based on the age that that young lady was found this happened. The reason I'm here for these victims who have never recovered, they've been at them. The other reason I'm here is because just the very nature of this crime, there are murders and there are murders. All murders are evil and they're terrible. This one, and I think it's been addressed by this board. For what? I mean, did she make you angry? Did she do something to you? Did she try to harm you? She walked up to his car, asked for help. No problem, I'm gonna help you. Pull out a tire to beat him to death. Put her in her car, got into her car, drove out of the parking lot of that facility, instead of turning left and going half a mile to the hospital, turn right, dump the body in a rural part of Ascension Parish in a swamp. And at the time he dumped the body, she was alive. She was gasping, whimpering. That's his testimony, not mine. That's what his statement said. And I preparing for these, I used to try to talk to the detective. And the detective in this case is now retired, but he's told me about this case. He said, "This is a case I'll never forget." And I'm like, "Why? Was it the nature of the victim?" He said, "No." He said, when we discovered the body, she had leaves and sticks in her hands, grass, like clutching life. He said, "That's just something, that thing was something that never makes me forget." That's the reason I'm here. This is the heinous crime. He was charged with first-degree murder. In 1986, he pled guilty to second-degree murder. Death penalty was taken off the table and he's paid for life imprisonment sentence. These people were asked to give by my predecessors. I wasn't in this, I wasn't around it. But apparently, he talked to them and said, "Look, let's do the second-degree murder, life in prison." So they gave a lot. They gave death penalty, life in prison. And now that those goalposts being asked to be moved again, and that's just something they cannot take. I, with my victims, am happy that this gentleman is finding God and doing some of those right things. But when my victims set them out, well, you can just as easily do that where you, there is consequences for those actions. This beautiful lady just got off of work at had car problems, walked up to somebody for help. And I would also ask you, before you decided to look at the facts, he said that he was coming on a vendor and smoked some weed that was laced with other. Actually, he had left the barroom, driving home, said he had car trouble, parked in the parking lot and was actually sleeping. And that she actually woke him up to ask for help. So I don't think that exactly dovetails into that. He was so smart and drug to the point that he lost his mind. That also, that is not in the statement. So that's new evidence. That's I must have missed it from what I reviewed. I didn't see it. In any event, I want to thank the board for letting us speak, and see you all. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, Mr. Derricks, is there a statement you'd like to make before we turn it over to Ms. Luna?
Yes, ma'am, Ms.
Remarks to the board.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Renatson. First, I would like to apologize to the family for the hurt that I've caused. And I know that truly this was a horrific incident that was perpetrated by my hands. And I don't know what else I could do to show my remorse. 5 years ago, when I was on the board, I was terrified of even sitting here before the board. And Judge Combs got my mind together when he told me that I was almost there, and I didn't understand what he was telling me then. But those 5 years, I had to reflect on what he was actually telling me. And I now realize that what he was telling me is that I had to own up to what I did and understand the hurt that I had caused this family and to take full responsibility for that. And I did that, and I made a promise to stay on the path that I was on and that I would help those that I come in contact with, because I know that there's still purpose in my life, and I wanted to show that. And I didn't just want to be another statistic, just somebody being in prison. I wanted to be somebody that could make a difference, whether I'm in prison or not, because I truly know the person that I am, and my family knows that I'm not a bad guy. I did a bad thing, but I'm not a bad guy. And I just, wanted people to understand that I don't want to be remembered as a murderer, but that's what I'll be remembered for the rest of my life. And I have to live with that. But even though that I would be labeled that, it doesn't mean that I have to let that become my reality, and that I can still be good in this world and do good to others and help those that I know that needs help. And I'm truly sorry for what I did, but I would just hope that you would see me for the man that I've become today and what I strive to be tomorrow. Thank you.
Ms. Reagan?
Yes, thank you. When I first met Jerome, I was really inspired by him, by his integrity, his honesty, and his true commitment to service. And as has been said, he entered prison at 20 years old, immature, an addict, and really out of control. And he is now matured into a 57-year-old man who is a pastor, a minister, a volunteer to help others, a teacher of classes like victims awareness and the Step Up program, and a leader here. And turning to the crime itself, there is absolutely no doubt this is horrific. It's senseless. It's difficult to hear. I cannot imagine what the family is going through and still impacted by this. And unfortunately, there's no easy answer, and Jerome would be lying to you if he gave a motivation that wasn't there. He was out of his mind on PCP and embalming fluid. He was seeing things, having hallucinations, out of his body, out of touch with his reality. And he committed this senseless act. And he does take responsibility for that. It was him who was in the mindset, who was out of control, who did those drugs, and who has to live with that fact and is remorseful for that act every day of his life. And while he cannot provide the family or anyone with an easy explanation for that and for his actions, for his out of control actions while he was on those drugs, he has committed to changing that, to taking those substance abuse classes, to dealing daily with his problems with addiction, with developing his inner strength in order to not have anything like that happen again. Throughout his time here at Angola, he has given back to others. He makes rounds to check on the elderly. He ministers to death row and to Camp F, conducts multiple services a week, works for decades now as a chaplain's clerk and an inmate minister since he was in the first class of the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. He's an artist, and he uses the art to affect others, as well as a musician with the Camp F Gospel Joy Singers. And he truly, from his time tutoring others and addressing the literacy problems here, he realized that he could have a change and that he needed to improve himself in order to then give back to others. And he has done that. He has improved himself. He is remorseful and rehabilitated. And if he were to rejoin the community, he has his transition plan with the Parole Project. He has his family support, community support, ranging from business people to professors at Loyola, all people who are eager to support him, to see him succeed, and to see him really thrive. He has a job lined up with Victory Enterprises. He would continue to stay sober and to go through the process that he needs to reenter society. He's been a trustee for around 3 decades now, and he has truly shown through years and years of consistent service to others and self-improvement that he is a rehabilitated man. And I would ask this board to recommend commutation of his sentence. Thank you.
I think we are prepared to vote. Mr. Arabella?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First off, I'd like to thank everyone who spoke here today, especially the family of the victim. You have shown us today absolute devastating effects that this horrible sentence has had. We appreciate you being here, talking to us, the courage that it takes to be in the company today. I've been in the criminal justice system for 50 years. It doesn't get any harder than this. These are very, very tough cases, very, very emotional. I was a prosecutor, as Mr. Babin is today. I was a public defender, I was a defense lawyer, I was a judge, and now I sit on the pardon board. And everyone has different roles as we sit here. I can remember as a sentencing judge listening to the horror of the crime and what my responsibility was and what I needed to do in terms of giving a sentence. Our role is to look at the facts of the case. All facts are horrible. All cases that come before us are horrible cases. The victims that are suffering day after day after. Our responsibility is not an easy one. Our responsibility is to look at everything, try to make a determination as to whether or not, in this particular case, Jerome Derricks has done enough to earn a commutation of sentence. And as I look at what all he's done, good comments from the Warden. He's taken excellent programs. He's a low risk, been in prison for 37 years. He's got a good disciplinary record. He's got a good reentry. He has never been in trouble before this horrible crime. It is senseless. It doesn't make sense as to why he did it. Looking at all of those things, taking all of those things, he said, my vote today is going to be recommended to the governor. Sentence to 99 years.
Mr. Freeman?
As Mr. Barabella said, it's hard for me personally to wrap my arms around why, period, as why. Usually there's always a reasoning behind these crimes, whether it be jealousy or whatever, or anger, something. But he, from what I know, I mean, he did not even know this lady whatsoever. And it just snapped and he did it. It's a tough, I really, he's done excellent in prison. But at what point has he done enough? My vote today, I'm gonna vote to deny.
Mrs. Jackson?
Mr. Derricks, you know, your case is unique in the sense that, you know, when people say, I'm not the same person I was, you know, when I came in, but you actually are the same person that you were. You had gone to high school, you had graduated, you participated in sports, you've never been in any trouble a day in your life. You were working, you were being responsible, except for the fact that you were using marijuana. And people using marijuana during that time frame, or even this time frame, does not rise to the level of making a person a horrible person. You know, obviously when I looked at the case, I'm thinking, why? There's no evidence that you robbed the victim. There is no evidence that you committed any kind of sexual assault to the victim. And the only thing that makes sense to me is that you were under the influence of a hallucinogen that caused you to respond in the way that you did. You know, I was a judge also for 28 years, and one of the last cases that came through my court was a man who stabbed his own little boy to death while being under the influence of mojo. Had been a great father. And so I know that it is possible for someone to do something under the influence of a hallucinogenic that they would never do at any other point in their life. And so I don't believe that, you know, you came in as a monster and somehow changed. I think you had been a good person. You were doing all the right things. And unfortunately for you, but even more unfortunately for the Nason family, you got a hold of something that changed the trajectory of your life. You have been a Class A trustee for 30 years of your 37 years. You have done exceedingly well during your incarceration. You have not negated in any way what you did. I don't think you really understood yourself why, except for the fact that I got a hold of something that I just did not expect to happen. And so looking at all the things that you have accomplished over the course of your incarceration, the person that you were prior to the date of this offense is the person that I see today as well. So my vote today would be to recommend a commutation of 99 to 99 years.
Mr. Roach.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, as the victim advocate on the court board, I'd like to apologize to Nison's family for the repeated appearance in this pardon hearing room. But the legislative body of the state of Louisiana makes the law, and the law gives an offender the right to apply for a pardon after a certain number of years of incarceration. And when that offender is denied at different intervals according to the crime, he's allowed to reapply. And this body is only an instrument of that legislative body who was appointed by the governor to fulfill the wishes of that legislative body. But I know it makes you relive this situation over and over again, but it is Louisiana state law that we do this. I'd like to speak to the offender's family. Thank you for your appearance. Thank you for the support that you've given Mr. Derricks. Mr. Derricks,
Yes, sir.
there's 3 reasons why a person is incarcerated: to rehabilitate himself, and I have no doubt that you have rehabilitated yourself. You've performed very well during your incarceration. The second reason is isolation. We want to isolate the bad guy from the community at large. And retribution. Punishment for the crime that he committed. And there is no reason, rhyme, or I can't even think of an idea why you committed this senseless crime. You couldn't articulate to us this morning the reason why. And everybody that spoke today want to know why. Mr. Derricks, I think you don't know the reason why, or the crime was so egregious that your inner being won't allow you to articulate the reason why. But that doesn't matter, because the crime was so violent, the crime was so egregious, you were aware that the victim was still living. You could have made a turn the opposite way and dropped off at a hospital, and you didn't. Based upon the violent, egregious nature of the crime, overwhelming expressed opposition from the whole legal community, the judge, the DA's office, law enforcement, the adamant opposition of the victim's family, my vote is to deny your request.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. All right, Mr. Derricks, you've got a split vote, 2 to grant, 2 to deny. So you know the outcome of today's proceeding is your application for clemency has been denied. Good luck to you.